It's one of the most powerful breakup songs ever recorded. A woman, struggling to accept that the man she loves has moved on, stands emotionally defeated while someone else walks away the winner. But when ABBA released The Winner Takes It All in 1980, listeners soon realized there was something unusually uncomfortable about the story. The man who wrote these heartbreaking words, Björn Ulvaeus, had recently divorced the woman who sang them, Agnetha Fältskog. So, was the world listening to a fictional breakup song, or to the very real collapse of an ABBA marriage disguised as a pop record? And perhaps the bigger question, what was it like for Agnetha to stand behind the microphone and sing it? Tonight, we dive deep into ABBA's The Winner Takes It All. Welcome back to another Senior Spinner Deep Dive. This time, I gave Danny the Diver an assignment that sounded pretty straightforward. Find out what really happened behind ABBA's The Winner Takes It All. Was it really Bjorn and Agnetha's divorce put to music? Or have we been repeating a great story about a great song for so long that the legend has become bigger than the truth? Danny, what did you find?
Well, Crispy, before we can adequately examine the composition itself, I believe it is necessary to establish the interpersonal dynamics that existed within ABBA during the years immediately preceding.
Oh, good grief.
What?
You made it 17 words before I stopped understanding you.
I'm providing historical context.
He's asking about a divorce, Danny. Somebody got married, somebody got mad, somebody got the house. Get to it.
That is precisely the kind of oversimplification that leads to historical misconceptions.
And that's precisely the kind of sentence that got you stuffed into lockers in high school.
Johnny, let him talk.
Fine, but if he pulls out a pointer and a map of Sweden, I'm leaving.
Actually, I do have a map.
Of course you do.
Danny?
Right. To understand what eventually happened with The Winner Takes It All, you have to remember that ABBA wasn't simply four musicians working together. There were two romantic couples inside the group. Björn Ulvaeus and Agnetha Fältskog were married in July of 1971. Benny Andersson and Annie Fried Lyngstad, or Frida, were also a couple, although they wouldn't marry until 1978. So as ABBA became one of the biggest musical acts in the world, their professional lives and their private lives were almost completely intertwined.
There's your first mistake.
Excuse me?
You don't marry your coworkers.
That's your contribution to this discussion?
Absolutely. Suppose you have a fight over breakfast. Now you've got to go to work with her, then you've got to sing with her, then you've got to go on tour with her, then you've got to go back to the hotel with her. Where do you hide?
I don't believe successful marriages are generally based upon having a place to hide from one's spouse.
Usually, it's Johnny doing the hiding.
Excuse me?
I've seen some of your girlfriends.
Like you're walking around with 10s on each arm. Keep going, Danny.
By the middle of the 1970s, ABBA's success was extraordinary. They had won the Eurovision Song Contest with Waterloo in 1974, and over the next several years, records like SOS, Mamma Mia, Fernando, Dancing Queen, and Take a Chance on Me turned them into international superstars. But there's something important about ABBA that can get lost behind the costumes, the harmonies, and those incredibly polished records. Some of their best music was actually quite melancholy.
Melancholy?
Yes?
You couldn't just say sad?
Melancholy and sadness aren't necessarily synonymous.
I knew I shouldn't have asked.
And as the 1970s progressed, some of that melancholy began appearing in songs about relationships. Knowing Me, Knowing You, for example, was released in 1977 and told the story of a relationship that had reached its end.
Wait a minute, that was before Björn and Agnetha split up?
Yes.
Well, that's a little creepy.
Why?
Because if my wife writes a hit song about our relationship falling apart, I'm going to start checking apartment listings.
Except Björn wrote the lyrics.
Even worse, the guy was writing his own weather forecasts.
So when did things actually begin falling apart?
By 1978, Björn and Agnetha's marriage was in serious trouble, and this is where the story becomes much more complicated than the popular version of it, because their separation wasn't some explosive Hollywood scandal. There wasn't one enormous public confrontation that suddenly destroyed the marriage. By their own later descriptions, they had gradually grown apart, and near the end of 1978, they made the decision to separate.
And ABBA was finished.
No.
Björn left.
No.
Agnetha left the band.
No.
They canceled the tour.
Johnny.
Danny, you can't divorce the woman standing 3 feet away from you and then show up Monday morning like nothing happened.
Apparently, you can, because ABBA continued.
Think about that for a moment. The marriage was ending, but the band wasn't. Björn and Agnetha still had records to make, television appearances, photo sessions, rehearsals, and songs to sing together.
Exactly. And in January of 1979, Björn and Agnetha publicly confirmed that they had separated. They emphasized that the separation was amicable, and importantly, that ABBA would continue. Their divorce would eventually become final in 1980. And then, only a short time later, Benny Andersson sat down at a piano and began developing a melody. At first, it wasn't called The Winner Takes It All. The working title was The Story of My Life.
Oh, come on.
What?
The guy gets divorced and then starts writing something called The Story of My Life, and you're going to spend the rest of this show telling me the song wasn't about the divorce?
That's precisely what we're going to investigate.
I've investigated enough. Case closed.
Not quite, Johnny, because the music was only the beginning. Björn still had to write the words, and what happened when he did would create one of ABBA's most emotional recordings and one of the most persistent stories in pop music history.
As was customary with ABBA, Benny and Björn worked together developing the music. But The Winner Takes It All didn't simply appear fully formed. There were earlier attempts at the song that were ultimately abandoned. The arrangement evolved, the tempo changed, and eventually Benny and Björn arrived at something much simpler, a descending piano-based melody that left an enormous amount of room for the vocal. Björn took a recording of the backing track home and began working on the lyrics. And according to Björn himself, this particular lyric was unusual. Normally, writing lyrics could be a difficult process for him, but this time, the words came remarkably quickly.
Funny how inspiration strikes right after a divorce.
Would you let me finish?
I'm helping.
You're really not. Björn has also acknowledged something else about that night. He had been drinking.
There it is.
Johnny.
Björn later described alcohol as something that loosened him up creatively that night, and as he listened repeatedly to the backing track, the story began taking shape. Not as an angry confrontation, not as revenge, but as a conversation between two people after a relationship has ended. One person has moved on, the other hasn't.
And that's an important distinction, because the person telling the story isn't furious. She's defeated.
Exactly. The narrator isn't trying to win the relationship back. She's trying to understand how something that once belonged to both of them can suddenly be over. And Björn built the lyric around the language of competition. There is a winner. There is a loser. There are rules. There are judges. And when it's over, one person walks away with everything, while the other is left standing there.
Written by a recently divorced man.
Yes.
For his recently divorced wife to sing,
Eventually, yes.
while drinking.
Would you stop building your case?
I'm not building it. You're building it. I'm just putting little flags on it.
Danny, you've been telling us that the song isn't literally about Björn and Agnetha. I'm starting to understand Johnny's problem here.
Thank you. Finally, a reasonable person.
I didn't say their divorce had nothing to do with it. That's the important distinction. Björn has been quite clear that there are elements of his own experience in the song. He knew what divorce felt like. He knew the emotions surrounding the end of a marriage. Those feelings inevitably became part of what he wrote. but he has also insisted that the story told in the lyrics is not a literal account of what happened between him and Agnetha.
Convenient.
Johnny.
What? If I write a song called My Brother Danny is a Pain in the Neck, you're gonna wonder where I got the idea?
No, I would write the sequel, Brother Johnny, the Brainless Dolt.
Hey!
Björn has pointed out one particularly important difference. The song portrays a breakup in which there appears to be a clear winner and a clear loser. He has said that wasn't how his divorce from Agnetha actually happened. Their separation wasn't one person triumphing over the other. It was considerably more complicated than that.
So he used something he understood personally, but created characters and situations that weren't necessarily Björn and Agnetha.
Precisely. And that's what makes the song so effective. He wasn't writing a diary entry. He was taking emotions he understood and turning them into a story that millions of people could recognize.
Fine, I'll give you that.
Thank you.
But we've still got one little problem. Why did he have his ex-wife sing it? Why not Frida?
I have to admit, Danny, that's the part I've been waiting for too. The music was finished, Björn had written the lyrics, and somebody had to sing them.
There really wasn't much question about who that somebody would be. Agnetha. Her voice was considered the natural fit for the song.
Natural fit? Danny, her ex-husband just wrote a song about a woman getting dumped.
Again, Johnny, the song wasn't literally...
Yeah, fiction. I'm sure that made everything much less awkward.
Actually, Johnny raises a fair question. Did Agnetha have a problem with singing it?
That's where the story becomes interesting, because if you're expecting Agnetha to throw the lyric sheet back at Björn, refuse to sing, or storm out of the studio, that's not what happened. Agnetha understood what the song was, and she understood that she was being asked to perform a character. She later described singing it almost like an actress playing a role.
That's some actress.
It had to be, because think about what she was being asked to do. She couldn't simply stand at the microphone thinking about Björn. If she allowed her own emotions to completely overwhelm the performance, the recording wouldn't work. She had to control them.
Which may explain why the vocal is so powerful. She's not screaming, she's not falling apart.
Exactly. And Agnetha herself later said something very close to that. She had to approach the lyric as a performance and couldn't allow her own feelings to take over. But that doesn't mean the recording session was emotionally neutral. Far from it. People present during the vocal recording reportedly found themselves becoming emotional as they listened.
Including Björn?
The accounts I've found don't give us enough evidence to say specifically what Björn was doing at that exact moment.
Oh, come on, Danny. You've got a map of Sweden, but you don't know if the ex-husband cried?
Research requires distinguishing between what we know and what we'd like to know.
This is why nobody watches documentaries with you.
Actually, Danny, that's an important point, because I've heard stories over the years that Agnetha herself broke down crying while she was recording the song.
And that's where we have to be careful. The story has been repeated so many times that it's become part of the legend surrounding the record. The divorced woman, singing her ex-husband's heartbreaking lyrics, crying into the microphone. It's a great story, but Agnetha's own recollections are more nuanced than that. She described the recording as deeply emotional, but she also described herself as maintaining control of the performance.
So no dramatic collapse over the mixing board?
Not according to the reliable accounts I've found.
No throwing headphones at Björn?
No.
No screaming, you sing it!
Johnny.
I'm just checking.
And in a way, I think the truth is actually better, because listen to that record. Agnetha doesn't sound like somebody who's lost control. She sounds like somebody fighting to maintain it.
And that's exactly what makes the performance remarkable. There's another misconception worth clearing up. Agnetha did not spend the rest of her life resenting "the winner takes it all." Quite the opposite. She has repeatedly identified it as one of her favorite ABBA recordings. In fact, she has called it her favorite.
Seriously?
Yes, she praised Björn's lyrics, she praised Benny's music, and she recognized that the four of them had created something exceptional.
Okay, I'll give her credit for that.
The point is that Agnetha eventually recognized what they'd accomplished. She later said that it took some time before she fully realized they'd made something special, and that's an extraordinary statement when you consider the circumstances.
Because somehow 4 people had to separate the personal from the professional.
Exactly. Björn wrote the words, Benny wrote the music with him, Agnetha sang the lead, Frida contributed to the vocal sound, and together they made an ABBA record.
You know what's bothering me?
Only one thing.
I'm serious. We've spent all this time talking about Björn and Agnetha, but what did the public think when this thing came out? Everybody knew they'd been married. Everybody knew they'd split up. Then they turn on the radio and hear that?
That's a very good question.
Wow, a compliment from Crispy. I'm going to write this date down.
Already did.
You really are annoying.
But Johnny's right. Whatever Björn intended, whatever Agnetha understood, the moment The Winner Takes It All left the studio, ABBA no longer controlled how people interpreted it. Listeners knew about the divorce. They heard Agnetha's voice. They heard Björn's words, and they connected the dots.
Which created a story that has followed the song for more than 4 decades. But there's another reason the record became so important. The Winner Takes It All wasn't simply an emotional curiosity about 2 divorced members of ABBA. It became a major international hit, and in some ways, it represented a very different ABBA from the group that had given the world Waterloo and Dancing Queen.
Meaning?
The glitter was still there, the harmonies were still there, but something had changed. ABBA was getting older, their relationships were changing, and increasingly, their music was changing with them.
And unfortunately for ABBA, Björn and Agnetha weren't going to be the group's only broken marriage.
Uh-oh.
Exactly, because while The Winner Takes It All was becoming one of ABBA's greatest records, the group's other couple was heading toward a breakup of their own.
You're kidding me.
No.
Danny, did anybody in this band just date somebody who wasn't in the band?
Apparently not successfully.
So The Winner Takes It All was released in the summer of 1980. And whatever listeners thought the song was about, they certainly wanted to hear it.
Very much so. The song reached number 1 in the United Kingdom and topped the charts in several other countries. In the United States, it reached number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. It became ABBA's 4th and final American top 10 single.
So the divorce worked out pretty well.
Really?
That's an appalling way to put it.
I'm talking about the record. Tough crowd.
But the song's success also ensured that the question we've been discussing would never go away. Was The Winner Takes It All really about Björn and Agnetha? And after going through the interviews and the history, I think the most accurate answer is partly.
That's your big conclusion. I could have told you that 3 segments ago.
Björn never denied that his divorce from Agnetha influenced the song. Quite the opposite. He acknowledged that the experience gave him emotions he could draw upon, but he has also repeatedly rejected the idea that the lyrics are a literal description of their marriage ending. There wasn't one clear winner. There wasn't one clear loser. And the events described in the song didn't simply happen to Björn and Agnetha exactly as they appear in the lyrics.
So it's not an autobiography.
Not literally, but it's not completely fictional either. Björn took emotions from something he had actually lived through and used them to create a fictional situation.
So let me see if I've got this. The divorce inspired the guy who wrote the song about a divorce, which was then sung by the woman he divorced, but the song isn't actually about their divorce.
That's surprisingly accurate.
I need an aspirin.
But maybe that's why people are still fascinated by it. Because we can't completely separate the record from the people who made it. Danny, nice job on the research.
Thank you, Crispy.
Yeah, nice work, Professor. You can roll up your map now.
Would you like to know the capital of Sweden?
No.
And that's going to do it for the Senior Spinner Deep Dive. Please be sure to support the channel by checking the thumbs up, subscribing, and tag the notification bell.
It's Stockholm.
I don't care if it's Timbuktu. Go back to your library.
For Danny and Johnny D, keep spinning.